drinking your bunghole juice.
You could leave that as the opener so no one has any idea what is being talked about. Welcome back, friends. We'll find out if that makes the cut.
Yeah, probably, because at this point I don't care. Here we are with the Code Geass follow-up video. Okay, make sure we're actually recording everything. I got paranoid for a second there.
I'll do that again if we need to. I'm committed. I'm committed to our fans.
So yeah, so here we're gonna talk a little bit about the series as a whole and touch base on some of the comments that you provided us in the last few episodes about different topics in the show. So yeah,
shall we dive right in?
Dive right in.
Dive right in.
So
in episode 23, Algernon Bartholomew Cordell. I'll just read it and then we'll respond. How's that sound? Good for me. Good for you.
Good enough.
All right. This was fun. I might suggest a few thought-provoking questions to consider for the finale. Let's just go one by one.
Okay.
Thought one. One of the most potent themes of the show and the discussion has been the nature of meaning in action. Lelouch is a master of thinking through the reasons for actions. He thinks almost instinctively about not only the reasons he acts, but also analyzing all of his opponents. Suzaku is a master of submerging his thoughts to accord with his actions. He must act, and therefore his thinking is used in defense of those actions. Other characters like Callan, Cece, Ogi, and even Cornelia have also provided more perspectives on this question. Beyond just the possibility of ambiguity, what do you think these perspectives say about our projection of meaning onto the world?
That's a heavy one. Well, I guess I mentioned a few different characters. I guess we could hit each one by one. What do you think these perspectives say about a projection of meaning onto the world?
Do you want to go first?
If you have something, go right ahead. I'm going to have to think a bit.
Okay, so the question is, what do you think these perspectives say about our projection of meaning onto the world? So I think with each person, depending on where you're at in life, your upbringing, your highest moral value, which I would define as the why behind your life. So why do you do things? With Suzaku, he wants to kind of make amends for killing his father. That's the why behind his life. For each of us in particular, because it looks like this question's about us as individuals.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like about each of these characters, since you mentioned Suzaku, I could touch on the other ones there. Lelouch, his goal is to basically do away with the prejudice he feels threatens his sister from having a happy life. I don't know if we've necessarily got it for Cornelia. The most we've gotten, I think, of Cornelia's ultimate thing is basically avenging, well, her goal inside Japan.
Avenging her brother.
Yeah, had been avenging the death of Clovis, her perceived death of Nunnally and Lelouch, basically vengeance against the deaths of...
The powers that be.
Yeah.
Whatever's in front of her. Callan... I mean, we kind of have something regarding her mother.
Callan has her mother tied into that, but they also both share pursuing the dream of Callan's older brother, Naota.
Mm-hmm.
And that.
Yep.
I don't think we gotten anything for C2 at this stage. I mean,
okay, moving on.
Yeah. Okay. The extent of C2s that we've been shown at this point in the story has basically been to...
She's Pandora's box.
Pay up her half of the contract she has made with Lelouch. At least particularly in the second half of this season, which has been basically like helping him.
And whatever contract she has with whomever she may or may not be a part of. Because there's V2 also. So
what do you think this says about a projection of meaning?
I feel like the question's a little bit broad because each of the different characters offers a different perspective on how we see the world. And honestly, as humans, people that are outside of the show, we can ebb and flow based on proving our point, to be frank. Like, I know that I've done it in the past where you'll pursue one thing and then someone will create an interjection and they're like, man, that's really a strong argument against my thing, so I'm going to wordsmith my stuff to change it to something else. So
You straw man the other person? Or, so it's like you're straw man the other person, or are you going to say, oh, that actually threatens my thing, I should update my thing? Because there's...
it depends. Are you talking in the moment or after?
In general. Like,
Because in the moment, oftentimes I'll just play the philosopher's game of like, okay, well, why do you think that? And flip it and make them bring up all these reasons, and then they get trapped in their own thing. I'm like, wow, that's rough. Thanks for playing. So it's like jujitsu.
So, note to self, big philosophical debates with you will have to take place over many days and not going to be settled in the moment. Got to remember that one.
I feel like you figured that out by now, but maybe you haven't. When all I'm doing is asking questions to you, you'd be like, wait a second.
Wait, I see what you're doing there.
What am I doing? Stop that. Okay.
I don't think we answered the question, but I'm fine moving on because I don't actually have much. I don't know. They're all, yeah.
I think that each character offers us the ability to look at how they view life and see how that relates with us, and to see the flaws in it by looking at the other characters. Because honestly, that's the thing about storytelling that most people really enjoy is we want to dive into someone else's life so that we can say, I've never looked at life that way, and either I agree with it or don't.
Yeah, something... I know Callan explicitly said this when they're at the campfire, asked Suzaku the question, didn't ask a question, but it said, there are some things more important than just like your life. There are things greater than living or sort of thing.
Yeah, it's like basically there's things worth dying for.
We're things worth dying for. There's just some type of supreme good or moral value, virtue, some type of goal that you place above all other things that is worth making sacrifices for, basically.
Right. To the point of your life. So, again, I don't know if we answered that for you, Algernon Bartholomew Cordell, but
that's a nice
we
name.
tried.
That's a great name.
So, number 2, I'll just read all his and you can read the next ones. One theme that hasn't been brought up much in the discussion is the way the show talks about time. C2, who lives in terms of eternity, has the weight of the past which defines her. Nunnally, a ward, as she is of the frailty of life, defines her life by the present. Euphemia, able to envision happiness, lives in the future. What do you think the way different characters are motivated by differing perspectives on time also says about the plot itself, playing with time through the horrors of the past, the promise of a future, and the experience of the present?
Okay.
So the question is, what do you think the way that different characters are motivated by differing perspectives on time says about the plot itself, playing with time?
Well, I don't know if I don't know if I necessarily entirely even would say I agree with the different time frames they've pointed to the different characters, though I can kind of understand what it is that they're talking about. Like, Euphemia wasn't always thinking of the future. She spent a lot of this season focused on the woes of not being in the good old days of the past sort of thing. But
she made a switch in the middle.
Yeah, there was a switch before that led up into the declaration at the school festival where she started projecting more into a good possible future. Yeah, I would agree with the point of Nunnally being in the present because of
she just wants to spend time with people and her brother and like
she just wants to spend time with her brother. That's all she wants, and she's happy with that.
Doesn't have many cares. She goes to school, lives a decent life.
And the other character mentioned there is C2. Okay, yeah.
The weight of eternity of the past. In terms of eternity, has the weight of the past. Sorry.
Some ageless witch, basically. We talked about this before, I thought, in some context or another. Maybe we didn't.
I don't think it was super in depth.
Right.
I think she's the hardest because, well, we get glimpses. Yeah, we get glimpses of her having basically flashbacks, which, if you don't know the original term, comes from World War I, World War II, where flashbangs went off, and they would, like, if they heard loud noises, they were brought back to the moment of them being on the field after the war.
Yeah.
Shell shock.
It was shell shock.
Shell shocked, thank you. That's I was like, I think I missed. Shell shocked is the original term for diving back into a moment where you're on the field again, and kind of that trauma comes back. So she had these moments of being shell shocked with flashbacks, where she was overwhelmed by it, but she kind of went into a vision.
Right. Well, when those came up, it was very often tied with Lelouch and the Geass connection that they have between them, which she would be flooding back into those experiences, and Lelouch would be getting glimpses of them with that.
Right.
But in regards to talking about the horrors of the past, obviously Suzaku has had the horrors of his own actions, not things that were necessarily done to him, but things he did.
Right.
Which is like when a lot of soldiers have, that's what a lot of the different, I guess, issues with like soldiers come back with PTSD. What a lot of that is them trying to basically meld the kind of worldview they grew up with of having, you know, like, oh, everything's nice, I am a good person, and then trying to reconcile that with all of like the things that would be, you know,
kill people overseas, whatever it is, whatever they went
that
through.
ambiguity of the morality of like killing people is wrong, but there are, just like with anything, there's always caveats and justifications for every different thing of where we make exceptions. So it's like those contradictions and trying to juggle with those.
Again, I don't know if
what does this have to do with time? Playing with time.
The plot playing with time itself.
How? I'm trying to think, I mean, in a literal sense, I don't know if the plot is necessarily played with time, unless I'm thinking of the question the wrong way. Well, if I focus on the thought of like maybe thinking about, say, the horrors of the past and the promises of the future and living in the present, I mean, I know something we'd said before was that, you know, living for the past is no good. Living, how would we say it? Like there's
it said like this: living for the future as if it's not coming fast enough, living in the past as if the future, or as if the present left too quickly, determines that you'll never be happy because you're always preparing for happiness in the future or believing that it left too quickly. Therefore, you're vain because you're playing with times that don't actually belong to you instead of the time that actually does belong to you, which is the present.
right.
Pascal, Blaise Pascal.
Well, with that, I feel what that kind of says is that, like, all you have is this moment. The future's coming, but all you have is the actions you can do right now, in this moment at the present.
Yep.
Like, so it's like you want to. I feel like you should be living, preparing to make the future better because it is coming, but you need to think about it in the sense of what is that you can do at this exact second.
The way that Peter Kraft puts it in the book Christianity for Modern Pagans, where he takes Blaise Pascal's Pensees, which is his wisdom literature that Blaise wrote before he died at the ripe age of 32 or 36. Real rough, 15th century. No, disease was rampant back then still. He says the endeavor that Pascal is talking about is saying that you want to live in the present, not for the present as a hedonist would, but in the present. So it's like, I have today. If I need to fix this remote, then living in the present means I should fix the remote. Yeah. Rather than simply, this falls apart really quickly. Next question. I think you get the point.
Yeah. Well,
I think I got bit by a bug.
All right, so the next question.
Sorry, Bartholomew.
Oh gosh, this is gonna be rough.
Cordell.
Do you think of Suzaku as corrupted? This is something I will follow up on later, but in season 2.
All the best to you. Thank you, Algernon, Bartholomew, Cordell. Appreciate it. So I think this is kind of directed to me because you've seen season 2.
Yeah. So and I could probably phrase the question differently, but you go at it with how it's first said.
So do I think of Suzaku as corrupted? In some sense, I could say I could agree with that. Like, based on his current ideals in episode 1 versus 25, if you were to measure him against his former self, then yeah, he's corrupted. However, if you give him the grace of being a human or a character, someone who's allowed to grow, then I'd say he hasn't been corrupted as much as he has been trying to deal with the experiences that he's been given, and he's choosing to react in a specific way like all of us do. I don't believe Suzaku gets up in the morning and says, I'm going to be evil today. Right. I don't believe Lelouch does either the same thing. Like, and I use this as a kind of a strong example that I tell people when I tell them, like, no one wakes up saying, I'm going to be a terrible person today, or I'm going to have a bad day, or I'm going to commit evil in the world. So I'm of Jewish descent, and I don't believe Hitler got up and said, I'm going to be evil today. He didn't do that. He believed that good that he was bringing to the world was going to help the world by killing the Jews. He was delusional. He was straight out delusional, but he didn't believe that he was doing evil. So what I honestly think, like, the question of corruption is more of a question about, do you have an anchor in truth that keeps you stable amidst circumstances? And Suzaku doesn't. None of these characters do. So they have their highest moral value, which is honestly tossed. It's a boat in the ocean that's tossed about by the waves, because as Suzaku has grown in this season, he's had to adjust and react. He still believes that he's helping people. He still believes that he doesn't want to kill anyone.
He still has the goal of wanting to better.
Deontology? Is that what it's called?
We can get, that's something someone else brings up in another question, which we'll get to next. But well, he's talking about he wants to better the nation of Britannia and bring a better life for the Japanese people. He wants to do it from the inside. He wants to do it through reform rather than revolution, which is where he counters as a kind of a adversary or opposite of Lelouch there. So I guess in the sense of, like, is he corrupted? I mean, he's grown. He's definitely changed from he was much more naive at the beginning, and now we've kind of seen. I don't know if he's necessarily been confronted with the contradictions that he had in his naivety, but he's definitely.
I don't think he has.
I don't think he's necessarily knowingly confronted them, but he is confronting them, and he's acting out of a place of anger at the end of the season, for sure.
Right. I don't think that means he's been corrupted, though.
Right.
Personally.
Yeah.
So I think that answers your question, unless you had a final thought.
Well, more of that, at least with what we've seen. I could say, like, in regards to the way, like, the death of Yuffie's kind of changed him and caused him to be different. I wouldn't use the word corrupted, but I would say he's definitely not chosen the best path of dealing with it at the moment.
I think he's delusional within his highest moral value.
What do you think that is then, his highest moral value?
It's the whole, I don't know how I would sum it up. It's his whole, like, I want to protect people. I want to make Japan better. I also want to kind of make amends for killing my father. But also, if I die, that'd be great.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair enough. Yeah.
It's not, I don't have this is the exact.
And I'd say that hasn't changed since the beginning. He's always had that.
Right.
I think he's maybe becoming a little bit less and less naive about the whole, like, I want this. How are you going to get there? I think he's a little bit less.
I feel like, I'm going to try another analogy here. It's a series of doors around a sphere that he's, like, continuing to approach with his desire of achieving these things of, like, making Japan better, like, all the things that he wants. And every time he approaches a door, most of them involve killing or aggression. And he's like, I'm not going to do that. So he has to shut the door, even though he wanted to pass through to accomplish his goal.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So
I think so.
I don't think that he's corrupted. I think that he's delusional within his own moral framework.
Okay.
Great questions, Bartholomew, Algernon, Bartholomew Cordell.
Again, great, awesome name. And sorry if we pronounce some of these wrong.
I just have a question for you real quick. Are you quoting Flowers from Algernon as your Algernon name? Do you know this story? I had to read it in, like, 7th grade.
I've not read it. I've heard of it.
You know of it? It's basically this, I say this in the most politically correct way, but a retarded man who is brought through a scientific experiment where he becomes highly intelligent, ends up falling for his scientist tester person, and then reverts back to retardation.
Wait.
So it's called Flowers for Algernon.
I feel like I have read this.
I think it was required for our state.
I feel like I have.
It's just my question is, like Algernon, is that where you got it from, or is it from something else? Let us know in the comments below.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so the next thing is from, again, I'm sorry if we pronounced this wrong, Isilianelli, I believe. Isilianelli. All right. I wouldn't say the show needs to delve deeper into philosophical themes. There's already a very strong philosophical theme present, the struggle between deontology and consequentialism. And just for a bit of help for everyone to get on the same page here.
Terminology for Code Geass follow-up video.
Consequentialism. A doctrine that the morality of an action is to be judged solely by its consequences. Deontology. The normative ethical theory that the morality of an action should be based on whether that action itself is right or wrong, when graded under rules of duty and obligation, rather than based on the consequences of the action.
So, both are two big ethical theories about what is good. Deontology says an act is only good when it is inherently good, and that the results don't matter. Consequentialism says that an action is good if the results strive to achieve good, even if the act itself is questionable. Lelouch is the embodiment of consequentialism, while Suzaku represents deontology. Both characters evolve, of course, so the clear-cut equation doesn't always hold, but then it's interesting to see how the characters evolve and what direction they evolve to. I'd say the show is sometimes even a bit on the nose with the theme, like when both Lelouch and Suzaku have their joint monologue, where the question is it good to be strong? Is it bad to be weak? They both follow the exact same reasoning, just like both ethical theories describe what is good, but they reach different conclusions. Lelouch concludes the fighting will end when one side wins, while Suzaku concludes that change has to come from within, but isn't sure how to implement it. We talked earlier about his naivety and how that's evolved. Another example is where Lelouch questions another character. This is from season 2. Okay. And even when characters...
goes
right past it. And even when the characters, the setting, and even the world changes, this conflict of ethical theories will always be present in some form. So, I guess, what merits do you see these two having?
So, I just have a question. Is there, I'm going to call you Nelly. I'm sorry. I'm just going to call you Nelly.
All right.
Is there another ology that mixes deontology and consequentialism? Because my thought is when I hear the definitions, and he and I, Kristopher and I have both talked about this a little bit here and there off the set. Mm-hmm. And I'm wondering, like, because deontology says... Deontology says that the consequence doesn't matter, or the outcome doesn't matter, which to me that's the flaw of deontology. Yeah, is that well, it doesn't matter what happens afterwards if you meant well. It goes to that very colloquial phrase: the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah,
because you can mean well for something and it can go terribly, terribly wrong. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's the flaw in that one. Consequentialism. I mean, that's got its own.
I feel like it's easier. They both have flaws to them. I feel like consequentialism is certainly an easy one to point to, but it does. I mean, in the sense of committing all of these atrocities, in the sense of Lelouch's goal of trying to create a better world, he has played hands in, basically the genocide of the Japanese people in some extent.
No, into all extent.
Well, not the Japanese people aren't gone, so it was a. Anyway, the point still remains is that
we were defining
to what extent does the end justify the means, and then to what extent is that no matter the results, good outcomes from bad actions are not worth it, which it was sort of something I skipped past in this question because it's relevant to season 2, but I can mention some of it is like, what do you do in the face of evil? Do you commit a greater evil to destroy evil, or do you remain silent and let the evil still exist? No matter which way you choose, the evil will remain. It'll either remain in the other person, or it'll remain in you.
Not necessarily.
Committing a greater evil.
It doesn't necessarily mean that you've committed a greater evil to stop evil.
Well, you don't have to commit a greater evil to stop evil necessarily, but in this choice of committing it, if you commit a greater evil to stop an evil. So there's two things here. Right, you can combat an evil without necessarily having to commit an evil, but sometimes that's not always an option.
Mm-hmm. I mean, yes. So I feel like we need... I'm just trying to think about how best to dive into this, because what is classified as an evil act?
Well, I suppose
right? So like,
Yeah.
you can't really like we can go around and around about these.
Well, right, that
if we don't define good and evil, and it has a foundational backing of some kind that we say this is.
Obviously, communities and cultures and social circles, they have shared morals and stuff. But in the end, if you were to look at it from a purely subjective point of view, whatever your supreme moral virtue, value, goal that you were pursuing that we talked about earlier, I guess it's in the end, it's going to be weighted against that. So an evil act would be something that either hinders that, destroys that, or is something that is directly against whatever that supreme thing is that you're...
So that still falls short to me.
Fair enough. No, it is an inadequate answer. It's a partial answer.
It's trapped in relativism, and I dislike relativism. I strongly dislike relativism because at the end of the day, if you talk around it enough, I can make you agree that I'm allowed to slaughter your family because that's my truth.
You know, that's fair enough.
Like,
okay.
That's like, there has to be an absolute backing for this. Otherwise, truth and good don't exist. But we know that they do exist because...
the reason I suppose I phrased it that way is because all of our different values, at some point in time, you're going to have different values in conflict with each other, and they're going to be, one of them will inevitably be more valuable than the other.
Yes,
so I guess
prioritization.
So whatever it is whatever value you have at the absolute top is in the end going to be in some way trickle down to things that are the opposite of good. So I get being that it's a general non-specific answer.
Good, evil. Yep.
Yeah. I guess that doesn't necessarily help.
So what was the final part of his question? Even though when the character in the setting will change. Remain steadfast in the goodness, even if it's important, and thus allowing evil to... So like that's so I guess my answer is this. You don't have to I'm trying to like live inside of the good and evil that he presents here, or she, sorry. I don't know. They, them, you,
Nelly.
Is that it seems like the way that you're defining goodness is not allowing for any killing. That's what it looks like here. Okay? So based on that, it's a catch-22 question, because if I say that you're allowed to kill the enemy, then based on what I'm reading here, and it could be my interpretation is wrong, maybe I didn't understand you, but based on what I'm reading here, it looks like any killing is considered evil. That's what it looks like. I mean, you read it.
I don't know if I necessarily agree with that strict of a definition. I think that it actually has maybe the opposite problem of maybe being too vague, of having not defined good and evil, which we could probably spend 3 hours defining good and evil if we wanted to.
We want to get to other people's questions.
We want to get to other people's questions. Because, I mean, like if we would just talk strictly about the thought of like killing other people, that's what we just talked about earlier about the soldiers coming back with PTSD and trying to, sort out their morality versus their actions and live a coherent life after all of that.
I don't believe that to remain steadfast in goodness aligns with not killing anyone. Because in the case of Hitler, again, you have to use extremes for the question of good and evil. I feel like you have to use extremes, especially because we don't have moral backing on what is good and what is evil, on what is truth, highest moral value, all these things. There's a lot more questions here that I think that you need to have at least a baseline, even if we disagree, like a baseline of like, this is what I define as good, evil, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
That I would say that it is beneficial to invade Germany in World War II to stop him slaughtering and genociding a group of people.
And generally take it over and being a tyrannical ruler over all of Europe, too.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
but obviously,
causing, like, and the thing is, like, go to the flip side. Hitler thought he was doing a good thing. We can't prove that. He didn't write down, I believe I'm doing something a good thing.
Certainly, for at least, I suppose before World War II, he was the best thing that had happened to Germany. They brought him out of the worst depression and everything that was in existence. Their country was torn apart. He reunified it. In the face of reunifying it, he's like, you know what? Let's go to war against the entire world and get close to winning.
The delusions took over, which brings up a question that we won't get into right now, but it's just like, everyone believes they're the hero of their own story. Everyone believes that they're going to get up and do something good, even if they're in habit and auto mode. Like, if you wake up and you just eat breakfast and go to work and pick the kids up and, like, take the dog for a walk, and then suddenly you have to stop a fight between two dogs, and then your arm gets ripped off. Who knows? Like, you still believe, and let me finish the story, and you beat the one dog to death that bit you. Like, you still believe that you got up in the morning to do good. People don't get up and say, I'm going to do evil today.
Well, like even maybe not. No, it's not even
99.9% of people.
Let's go beyond the dog that you killing the dog that bit you. Let's go beyond that and just talk about, like say the death penalty for murderers or something. You know.
So there's another, it just unwraps.
So I mean, I guess sort of sum it up in regards to consequential versus deontology. It's like they're both incomplete and flawed ideologies.
Yes.
Because, like, I feel like a broken record. I've said this a billion times. I feel like in the series of Code Geass here with this is like context matters. The specifics of your unique situation matter in regards to how you're going to, value and what the best. I mean, sometimes there is no good option. You just have to pick the less worse one.
I think that Nelly is the person who also put like something about seeing things in black and white. And so it's interesting that they proposed this question of asking a kind of black and white question of regarding good and evil, because if I remember the comment, I don't remember where it was, but saying that one is good or one is bad is a black and white statement. I think it was in another episode. It was that long one that we didn't copy over. That doesn't help you. Anyway,
that does not help.
Those are our thoughts on good and evil and that. And so to finish up episode 23, we have another hard-hitting question here from Michael Spangler. You can go.
Michael Spangler. Criticized for being emotionless, obsessed with consistency, has some kind of wheel fetish. This man is clearly a robot.
Michael, you have found out my true identity. You have also discovered that there have been 222 wheels counted in this series, even though I missed a couple episodes. Which lets you know that I'm not a robot because I failed.
We got 222?
Yeah. I did it. Episodes 1 through 5, there was 95 of them that I counted. 6 through 10 was 56. 11 through 15 was 51. 16 to 20, I didn't count any because I forgot, pretty sure. Or there weren't any there. 21 to 25 is 20, which equals a total of 222 wheels.
The answer to the question you all came here wanting to know.
Viewable wheels. Remember that. We didn't count implied wheels.
222 counted instances of viewable wheels.
Yes.
In season 1 of Code Geass.
With a margin of error of 1 to 35. 45. Small margin of error.
That means that there could be as much as quick mental math 267 wheels?
With give or take.
Give or take.
I'm really hoping that some YouTuber has gone through and
actually it's 314.
Don't insult our viewers. That's my job. People like you.
Oh, oops.
Okay.
Too late.
Episode 24.
Going to the next one, 24.
These are quick.
Okay, yeah. So in episode 24, Xanis DG actually really wanted to know what he was going to say about Kenshin. Stop ruining the jokes, Kristopher. I have the editing power. I am God in this universe. What were you going to say about Kenshin?
You're not wrong. Well, I was just, the beginning of that episode was, I was making all these jokes about different animes that are not the show that we're watching. And I didn't necessarily have a full fleshed out joke about Kenshin, but I love that show. I originally grew my hair out at the age of 13 because I wanted to be like Kenshin. And so I think Rurouni Kenshin's phenomenal. And I told Kristopher about it. I said we should maybe watch it. It is a 3-season show with 95 episodes. So it's a little bit of a commitment. But if you guys vote for it, then we'll go through a season at a time and kind of like go back and forth between this and something else. So anyway, that's episode 24. We have a couple more comments here, but we want to make sure that it's recording.
Ratchet Fan 321. Episode 24. Too much flying, not enough wheels.
My man.
All 222 of them.
Season 2, we're going to count all the wheels. Unless we run into the same thing we did in season 1 where I forgot. But otherwise, we're counting all those wheels. I'll look for you in season 2.
Tanvu, however you pronounce that.
Tanvuski.
I am sorry, however you pronounce that. I like how you guys dress for the event. One shirt is black and white, aka Black Knights colors, and the other is the blue and red, aka Britannian colors.
Thank you so much. We planned that out.
That was completely premeditated.
We planned that out. It's good to go. We were forward-thinking. We just wanted to be real participants of the show.
I like how I jump in agreement, saying, yes, it's premeditated. You say, no, it wasn't premeditated. We planned it. Ha!
I thought you were going to tell me I was wrong, and we were going to tell them the truth.
You just spilled the beans there.
I have no beans to spill.
So, someone commented in episode 25.
Can we just pause a second? I love this username. I just want to sidetrack for a quick story. My older brother and I used to play Halo together, and it used to say, you were killed by, insert username. And he thought he was the funniest person, but it makes me think of this. His username was nobody. You were killed by nobody. And then other friends in our community would do somebody or, a fart or things like that. So it's just like, it really fits. So when we're using your username, it's like, someone posted this. And it's like, well, who's the someone? Well, that's just their username. Good job. Anyway.
So both someone and Jeffrey Bleakwolf, both of them did some comments about the military aspects of the last couple episodes there. So someone says, since Jonathan seems to care about the military part of this episode, he should remember that. Oh, start with the thumb, right.
Thumb. How to count like a true American. In case you haven't watched that one, go back and check it out. Links below. You're welcome.
More work for me.
Hey.
The Black Knights have been created something like 6 to 10 months ago. The Black Knights are not professional soldiers. They are mostly normal people who fights for their freedom. The Black Knights have a lot of foot soldiers, but they don't have a lot of good experienced officers, so their command structure is pretty basic and weak. The Black Knights are an underground and split into cells organization, which means they can't do a lot of training for large-scale I pushed a button and it moved things.
Large-scale battle.
There it is. Large-scale
Yep, right there.
What number was that one?
You were on number 4.
So large-scale batter.
Large-scale batter. For pancakes and waffles.
All of their battles so far were a lot smaller in scale and worked based on surprise attacks. But more importantly, the Black Knights don't just lose because Zero leaves. They lose because, again, 1. Zero, Commander, leaves and takes their most powerful nightmare with him. Zero is also the miracle worker of the Black Knights, mostly because the BKs are fighting only because they think Zero can make them win unwinnable battles. What do you think will happen to the morale and resolve of the BKs if Zero just left without saying anything? Ogie's second in command is shot. Their HQ is attacked by the Avalon and Nina and becomes inoperative. The Britannian defense was very good and effective and took down a lot of Black Knights. All of the above when the battle was already hard and fought won from the very first place. About Toto. He is wounded, tired, and stuck fighting the Glaston Knights. He has no way of really knowing what's going on elsewhere and giving orders since HQ is down. Zero gives him all responsibilities at the worst possible time when he's literally fighting for his life on the front line. And the last point, the Black Knights had a 99.9% chance of losing the war without Lelouch anyway. He would have never entered the city if Lelouch hadn't used his gas to destroy the outside perimeter, true. And honestly, without the Gawain or some sort of support, I really don't see how the Black Knights could have won the battle even with Lelouch commanding. I do want to quickly jump off of this. Something he didn't mention was, if you piece together pieces of dialogue, Lelouch's plan was clearly to take Cornelia back to HQ and use her as a hostage and bargaining chip to then get him an audience directly with the Emperor. Right. So he wasn't even planning on drawing out a full battle, actually. But of course, no one else in the entire everything else knew that, because, and actually I think in some way this ties into the comment of cell structures and expand on something I said in the previous episodes about
Are you going to tell me that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell?
No. But it was in the sense of going further on, in the sense of them having autonomy. I could be wrong, but my understanding then of how the way cell structures works is they actually have very limited autonomy, and that the purpose of some of these different cells is more in the sense of that they are dealing with very small puzzle pieces that someone higher up in the organizational structure is helping them dictate. Yes, there's a sense of
Autonomy.
some sort of autonomy, but so much into that they're given very small piecemeal tasks. So that, and the whole point of the cell structure is that things are classified above a certain level, and that you can throw out an entire cell and the whole thing still keeps working, just like a body or an organ. You know, kill a few cells, the other cells take over, sort of thing.
Mitochondria.
Very detailed points about fighting.
No real question. However, Jeffrey Bleakwolf might have a question. Let's look.
Maybe. So furthering on these same thoughts, Detard's team was tasked to get a hold of media outlets. Yep, we remember seeing that on the map. Their team's purpose is to prevent media outage and to broadcast the rebellion's progress to the world and also aid in Black Knight's propaganda. When Detard was assigned as the next deputy commander, as Ogie's substitute, I think that's right. You said, correct me if the designation's wrong. It was something to that effect.
That's what he told Toto.
Yep. He doesn't necessarily know everything since he's monitoring the battle and curating what to broadcast. I feel like that means he understands a bit more, though. Curating what to broadcast. He may have known the factions he can use and how to play them, like Lelouch, but I think Jonathan may have missed that Detard pointed out that they needed Zero's charisma. A morale point.
He pointed that out.
Like, it may be hard for the Japanese rebels to trust a Britannian broadcaster calling the shots up against Britannian forces, right? The same with Toto's case. He may be brilliant with warfare tactics, but without the right charisma to rally the different rebel factions, everything would still fall apart. Which I think, sorry, I'll keep reading. Knowing the main person behind the rallying these rebel forces together was removed from battle that could easily destroy the morale of these armed participants. This is the very same reason why Cornelia wouldn't want Guilford and the Glaston Knights to be informed of her injuries after dealing with Zero atop the government building. Yeah. So that's a big point on morale right there. And if you actually remember when Detard, it was a single line when Detard was doing some of that negotiating. I think he was like in the backseat of a buggy or something. He'd said like, no.
Where was he?
I think he was in the backseat of a buggy or something going through the battle.
Can you just do that again for us real quick?
Like that. Well, he says like, no, Zero's, he says like, no, Zero's still around. He's just transferred command straight to us on the front lines or something. So he was trying to cover up the fact that he'd left a little bit there too, if I understand correctly.
I don't remember that line, but I believe you.
But
you should go check for that buggy scene.
Yeah. I don't know why I'm doing that. He's having handles. He's in the back. Someone else was driving, but
horses, apparently.
Oh, apparently.
Unless there are horses without wheels that are used to. Anyway,
yeah. A lot of good insight and points. It's made it really interesting to sort of think through all of these things again with the series.
If you guys like this personal dialogue with you regarding comments, let us know below, because we can try to incorporate this in where we grab comments from a previous episode and kind of talk through it, almost like they do regarding other shows where they'll watch like The Walking Dead and then they have directly following The Talking Dead where they talk about the show afterwards. Yeah. Or Shark Tank and then Beyond Shark Tank, I think is what it's called. Shark Tank's an investment show. Okay. Anyway.
It's got nothing to do with
I know you had
Shark
a couple
Week.
more questions. Oh. No, not at all.
So there was a few other points that I wanted to bring up because I feel like throughout the series we didn't go terribly in depth with them, as well as some of the other things. Now that we're at the end of the season, we're able to talk about them with a bit more context. The first thing I want to start with involves C2 and the Mao arc, because it was something I remembered when I had first watched the series, but we didn't really talk about it at all this time. I think I just kind of forgot, but part of it is also the way I remember and perceived the sub and the dub. I just felt the emotions a little bit differently. Okay. And this, has to do with C2's, I guess, fear of obsession, people being obsessed over her. And this was a particular point and emotion I remember feeling very strongly in the Japanese dub with the subtitles. I didn't feel it as strongly this time. I'm not sure exactly why. I don't think it's like dub's better than subs, better than whatever, but the emotions are a bit different, or it could have been I was focused on other aspects. But I very much remember there's a big point where, I mean, Mao, we were introduced with Mao with coercing Shirley And then when he takes the headphones off, when we first see C2, we hear C2's voice. You can do it, Mao. That's the way, Mao. Good job. You know, and all those sorts of things. And we obviously see he's mentally.
He's delusional.
Yep, he's delusional. And
Yeah.
you said something about being a puppy and licking up ice cream or something like that. Is what you said or something. But yeah, he's crazy. He's upset. To use the terminology, he's obsessed with C2.
Yeah.
And at the end, when Lelouch and C2 are on the rooftop, C2 in the dub, I know she turns to him and says, when he says, like, I will stay with me and do all of these sorts of things, she turns to him and says something like, is this because of your, is this something because it's heading towards your dream, your goal, or is this because of an obsession with me? And she kind of like was recoiling while saying that. And I don't remember the exact words. I just remember that point seemed a lot stronger when I'd first seen it subbed versus this time around. But I wanted to bring this point up because it is a central point to C2, and when it resurfaces again as an issue, I don't want it to just come out of left field, you know, in season 2, with it never having been touched on or explored. Instead of, you know, like, hey, remember 50 or 20 episodes or 10 episodes or 7 episodes ago, this happened? And you're just like, nope. So I wanted to bring that up so it was at least on your radar.
This sounds like a spoiler.
Is it a spoiler? I feel like I've been incredibly vague about it all.
Well, it's the term when it comes up again.
Oh. Well, I say that because this ties... Okay, you know what? Maybe I should use my words a bit more carefully, but I say this because...
It sounds like a spoiler.
I say this because of the very next point. I'd be surprised to see how it comes up, actually.
Can we just pause a second? Am I wrong? When he says when it comes up...
Okay, here's the thing.
I need you guys to back me up on this one. Come on.
Okay,
He
fair
told me
enough.
I'm not allowed to read the comments. And so,
just say
because
that.
of spoilers,
Okay, here's the
and he
thing.
just spoiled something. Maybe.
I say I want to emphasize that maybe because I know why I'm bringing this up, and fair enough.
And I'm
maybe
sure that they do too.
Right, I could have said that better. I could have said that differently.
But that's funny.
Fair enough. I could have said that better. I could have said that differently. But because I know why I wanted to bring this up, I feel like me saying that has made you think there's a certain type of spoiler.
Yeah,
Which may or may not be true.
Here's the thing. You got me thinking about Mao again,
yeah.
and I'm just thinking, what does he do when the batteries die?
See, batteries. Oh, for the headphones. Probably gets new ones. He just hops into
ruins the question.
Hops into Radio Shack or the nearest 7-Eleven.
Radio Shack.
Where's
How
the
about
nearest
the Burger
7-Eleven?
King? Was it? Oh, Pizza Hut. The nearest Pizza Hut, and it's like, hey, you got any batteries? They're like, yeah, we sell batteries. It's Japan, bro.
With their double mayonnaise, double mayonnaise pizza.
Oh Lord, that sounds terrible.
It does sound terrible.
Finish this so I can click that.
Okay. Well, talking about Mao, something we brought up before earlier on in the series is the idea of story structure and chiastic structure and chiasmas.
Love it.
Now, having seen... Now, I haven't written out a huge list, and I probably, if I decided to put effort into this, maybe I would have. But...
Maybe they can help.
Anyway. I'm sure it exists somewhere. But now, seeing this first season as it has been, can you possibly imagine a particular element of the chiastic structure that could be easily pointed to here as a central theme for season 1, since that's all that we've seen?
Geass corrupts. Power corrupts.
You want to elaborate any more on that, or?
I mean, I'm trying to think back to 25 episodes.
Fair enough.
You know what I mean? Like,
well, the reason I was wondering about that is because I feel like there's a similar point in some of that, but in episode 1, want to stop? Right, so back again, now that we've dumped footage and cleared the camera's card. So we're talking about the chiastic structure. Remembering back, some of the themes brought back in episode 1 about, like, only those who kill should be those prepared to be killed or something like that. And with the middle of the episode, if we think about the chiastic structure, about how it's supposed to, like, revolve around a central point, and how in this particular first season,
episode 13.
well, this is what I said. It's kind of a bit it's not exactly like this. And based on who was it? Oh shoot, I didn't pull up that comment, but it was about how this series was apparently originally supposed to be 50 episode seasons, but then like through negotiations with the network or broadcasting company or something, they ended up having it. And so in their rewrites, the studio, when they were rewriting, they focused more on condensing and plowing through it. I imagine they did major rewrites all the same, but there's, based on how packed full all of these episodes are, it makes me think that there's a lot of their focus was on a condensing rather than okay. I'd have forgotten already what I was saying. Like back in episode 1, something that was mentioned, Lelouch ended the first episode having gotten the power, you know, power of the king, life of solitude, all of that stuff. And he'd said only those who kill are those that should be prepared to be killed themselves. And how then in the middle of this season, how a chiastic structure is kind of centered and mirrors around a central point. And how at the middle of this series was the Shirley and Mao arc. Well, I suppose the exact middle point would have been the reveal of Lelouch having killed Shirley's father, would have been the exact middle point. But the arc that stems from that central arc, which I think, I mean, you could make arguments either way for how a chiastic structure would theoretically work. But if we focus on the arc there, what that arc ends up showing is Mao and being completely overrun and dominated by the Geass power. I mean, he was already, well, for one reason or another, because of the Geass power and his relation with C2, drove him to a crazy obsession mental state. And so at the beginning, you have him gaining this powers, like you will be isolated. In the middle, we get the epitomal example of everything possibly that could go wrong if you're with it. Sure. And now here, we've had that happen to Lelouch right there. And so, granted, we're obviously only halfway through the series, but because there's this kind of symmetry that is written into the show, I always found that interesting. Didn't know if you had thoughts on it, and if saying this has made you aware of it, or
I didn't notice it. I think catching chiastic structure the first time going through a story, I think you got to be a genius to do.
I would agree that you're not wrong.
Or your memory has to be phenomenal.
Right.
And neither of those things apply to me. I mean, well, I consider myself a genius. My mom tells me that I'm a genius. You've never said that about me. They've never said that about me. Still a genius. Anyway, I just know my memory's not that great.
Okay.
For details.
Okay. Well, the reason I
could flip through these notes if you wanted me to
I thought you were doing that before we started.
Well, I did, but again, like, yes, episode 13 is before VR guy, who we find out later is Mao, meets Shirley. So that's episode 14. So it's like, okay, there's a chiastic structure.
Okay. Well, I was wondering.
I don't know what you want to talk about it.
I was curious because now we're done with season 1. If you might have predictions of what could happen in season 2. That's why I was curious.
Okay.
Then
that should be the question then.
Okay. Well, I wanted to buffer it with some context. So here's context. What do you think is going to be coming up in season 2?
Shirley's dad comes back to life. Oh, I lost Wi-Fi. I was like, what? I heard a noise, and then I was like, what'd you do? Predictions of season 2. That's the question.
Yeah, what do you think is going to happen in season 2?
I think Suzaku and Lelouch are going to find themselves more aligned, but still at this. There's a line between them, so like they'll be doing very similar things, but on the opposite sides of the line, kind of like Republicans and Democrats. Boom. I believe that C2 will have a connection. Well, she's already said that she talks with Marianne, so that's something.
You've speculated she's talking to more than just Marianne, too.
Oh, yeah. I bet she's talking to the king, too. Talking to some sort of godlike figure, probably. Talking to V2. Talking to Talkers. Talkerstown. Talking to Talkerstown. Yeah, she's talking to everybody. She's just one big gossip.
At the end of the, well, of course, at the end of the season, she'd reaffirmed with Lelouch as like, I'm here to support you through your goal. And obviously she's immortal of some sort and committed suicide. So for whatever that's worth with, you know, not really, it's like,
I'm
going to go through the pain of drowning in the depths of the ocean and being crushed. But, you know, just to get Jeremiah off your back. No biggie.
Yeah. I think Jeremiah's going to come back. I think they'll rescue him. Earl Pudding should hopefully, I'm hoping that he's going to marry his lady bride. I hope that there's some new technology that they reveal in season 2.
Okay.
Maybe more wheels? I don't know. Maybe
More
less wheels. Maybe more flying. Probably see more Schneisel. We might meet an additional 12 other siblings. I don't know.
Lelouch is 17th in line, so hey.
Yeah. That Lelouch could kill for no good reason. How do I really feel? Yeah, I think that the Black Knights will be reunited under Lelouch. I think Dietard will be involved still. Ogie's still on board. Callan will still be on board. She probably took the shot at Suzaku.
That's what I was going to lead into a specific thing there. Yeah, so how do you think that played out, you think?
I think she took the shot. She tried to kill Suzaku before.
She took the shot or she fired the shot? She took a bullet or she let loose a bullet?
She pulled the trigger.
Okay.
She's not close enough to jump in front of a bullet.
And she's not Spin Zaku.
I don't know what that means.
Suzaku always does this weird like spinny kick as he flies in. He did it both in the suit and out of the suit.
Oh, okay.
You first see him episode 1, he spins in to kick Lelouch inside the Lancelot. He does it a whole bunch. He spin kicked the machine gun turret at on the hallway.
Unless you're quick, spin kicks are a waste of time and energy. Let me just tell you.
Obviously, well, Suzaku can, you know, dodge bullets from a machine gun emplacement in a machine. So he's obviously quick.
Okay, next question. Those are my predictions.
All right. So this has been season 1. It's been interesting going through your comments and questions, and hopefully we did okay-ish at going through them.
I think we've learned a lot.
Yeah, this has been... I've seen this show several times, going through this with you and with reading these comments also. Yeah, has made very different experience for me.
Yeah,
it's very interesting.
It's a community experience now instead of a personal experience.
Part of it's the gap in time between me having watched this last of a few years. It's made me, I've seen it in different lights than I had before. Now I'm kind of looking at it a lot more critically. It's really interesting to doing it that way.
So let us know what you thought about this show. Let us know. We're going to do another video about an update about the channel coming up. But, you know, if you guys liked having this dialogue where we've pulled individual comments and we shot them back at you and tried to answer them as best we could. We're trying out some new equipment too. So ran into a few errors there, but we're hoping that the video quality looks better for you as well. So stay tuned for the channel update.
Yeah, and we'll go in this more detail in the channel update video. But we're going to be taking a quick hiatus from Code Geass to address other things. Channel update video will have more details about that. But if you've liked this and you want to know when all of this is going on, subscribe.
Yes,
I'm going to show us out a little bit. Subscribe, and you'll get notified of when things happen.
Subscribe, like. Tell your friends how unfunny I am and make fun of me together in a group setting where you're all subscribed. Or tell them how funny I am. Who likes the wheels?
You can count. Oh, lots of people seem to like the wheels.
I knew it!
You can count wheels with Jonathan also. What? I've not seen this one. I did not see this question till just now. Ratchet Fan 321. Wheels or hover?
Hover.
What? Not wheels?
That was my complaint from the beginning. Why are we using wheels when we're in the future? We can fly.
Lelouch or Suzaku's operating way of thinking?
Suzaku's.
No.
Lelouch thinks too much.
3.
I don't know what that means. Anyway,
All right.
like, subscribe. We appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in.
All right.
Stay tuned. Finger guns.
Yeah, if there's something in the front that's being dumb. Oh, you're... I didn't think you were actually going to do that. How's the hair taste?
Good. Good. You're fixed. You agreed. Welcome back, friends.
Huh?
We'll find out if that makes the cut.